actual footage and then interviews with people who were actual witnesses of a particular incident that took place. I've also seen now where some departments are starting to use body-worn camera footage and starting to debrief and use that as an example of something that was handled very well and something that was not handled very well. So again, that sort of training now is something that is critical, and I think it's very important. We can always learn either how to do it better or exactly what. Don't let yourself get put down this path because it doesn't lead you anywhere.
So, yes, ma'am.
I don't know if I fully understand but part of what we're doing is looking outside of the Baltimore Police Department at best practices that are being used in other jurisdictions that have gone through the consent decree process. And there are many that have done it. Seattle is one. We've had people go to Los Angeles, one example, to take a look at their training and so forth. There's also data available in terms of the kinds of incidents where you wind up with situations where officers have to exercise judgment, not always good judgment, when it comes to dealing with these particular cases. One of the members of our monitoring team, for example, Dr. Randy DuPont, is the individual who actually created what's become known as the Memphis model, which basically is a crisis intervention training. He started it there, obviously, in Memphis, Tennessee, but it's teaching officers how to identify people that are going through some kind of mental health crisis and how to effectively deal with it. How do you avoid pouring gasoline on the fire, in other words, right? Because it's already in a heightened state. You know, the easiest thing in the world is escalate. The hard thing is de-escalate, right? And so, when you go into these situations, there are things you can say, there are things you can do, even from some of your body language, that can actually make a situation worse. And so we learn these things along the way. And we bring in mental health professionals, we bring in other people that help us when we create a curriculum. And some of it is based, quite frankly, on lessons learned in other cities. Baltimore's not the first city that's had a consent decree, and not the first city where training has been a huge issue. Rewriting policy has been a huge issue. And so we gather as much as we can and certainly make it fit Baltimore. But good behavior is good behavior, bad behavior is bad behavior. And what we want to do is force officers to actually justify what it is they do and then properly document it. I mean, you read some of the reports, and whereas what the officer observed at the time might have been reasonable suspicion, but if you can't put it in writing and put it on paper, then when somebody reviews it later on, what have you got? And who's the supervisor that signed the doggone thing? I mean, so it's not just the cops, it's the supervisors that ought to be paying attention and correcting the behavior and making sure things are done properly. So a lot of our training is going to be supervisory training as well, because they're the people that are responsible for seeing to it the stuff gets done and gets done properly. Monitoring team will come and go. This department has to be able to stand on its own 2 feet, along with the community, and make sure that you've got a professional organization here capable of protecting and serving the people of Baltimore.
I have a question, and I'm only asking this, I might have missed this, but there's been a lot of controversy recently because Councilman Dorsey took the assignment sheet from the entire department, found that there were only 900 officers who were available to schedule to go to patrol. There's 1,700 budget positions. Have you looked at that issue? Do you have any comment on that? Because it means that patrol is like, where are those officers? And certainly,
next section, you anticipated the next discussion.
oh, okay. That's
Yep.
I'm sorry. I thought I missed it.
No, you didn't miss it. But that's a great segue. So Chuck's going to be talking about staffing next,
Okay,
and kind of.
All right, sorry. Thank you. Okay.
Staffing is a problem. I could end it there. It is a problem. I I mean, we've had, there's a study that is nearing completion. The Police Foundation was brought in to conduct a staffing study for the Baltimore Police Department. But we already know, and just from having spoken with police officers, with residents, clearly it is a problem. Officers are being assigned extra duty. They get quote unquote drafted for extended tours of duty. They're already working 10 hours in patrol. They get extended out another 4 hours or so. You can only do that for so long. You just simply cannot continue to do that. The department is not staffed properly. It just isn't. The other problem is supervisors. There's not enough permanent ranked supervisors to go around. So you've got a lot of officers that have been selected to work out of grade, as we call it, to be acting sergeants, or sergeants being acting lieutenants and so forth. So you need to have permanent ranks as well, supervisors, so that the span of control is sufficient for a supervisor to be able to actually monitor what's going on out there in the field with the personnel under their control. It is an issue, and there's no way of trying to put any kind of positive spin on it. Now, I don't know what the final outcome's going to be in terms of the staffing study, but there has to be a readjustment, because the patrol division in particular, and let me admit my bias already, I'm oriented toward a patrol division, uniform patrol, but I do know from experience that if you don't have patrol adequately staffed, you're going to have problems. And you certainly cannot work people 12 hours extended shifts on a regular basis. You just can't do it. When we start talking about use of force, we start talking about all this other stuff, a lot of it has to do, if you're tired, and it's easy to get agitated, we're all human beings, right? And so it affects everything. It affects the quality of the work you do. It affects everything. And so, yeah, staffing is an issue. There's no doubt about it. The report should be coming out. Seth, is there a date yet for the...
I think the initial draft is going to be coming out in August, in a couple of weeks, and then the final will be filed before the beginning of September.
Yeah, there was actually a conference call today, which I wasn't able to be on, because I was on another conference call on staffing for BPD. But it's being taken very seriously, believe me, because it's a huge issue.
Fred, the question is, when you do the calculations, 30% of all sworn officers are on patrol. Where are the rest of them? Is that an issue of allocation too? It's not just about how much.
It is, well, you've got to look at all of it. You've got to look at how you're deploying all of the resources that you have. So the utilization could be something that needs to be taken into consideration. You need police officers doing jobs that require a sworn officer to do. A civilian can do the job. We need to be hiring more civilians. So it's not just about hiring cops. It's also about what they're doing, where they're assigned. So that's all part of the comprehensive staffing study that's being conducted. So I don't have precise answers to you, but I can tell you that patrol is understaffed. Detectives have too many cases that they're assigned to. It's not just uniform patrol, but if you're a detective, you get your house broken into, you want to, if you get a detective out there, you don't want a detective that's already got another 50 cases that they're looking at, because you want to be able to get somebody who's going to pay attention to your case, right? And so prioritizing, the cases and so forth to be able to actually have a chance of being able to solve it. So it's not just uniform patrol, it's staffing shortages in other critical areas of the department's operation as well.
Let me say one of them. You missed this part. I'm actually not talking about what we all know. They're down investigating. Why is that important?
Well, we need investigators to make sure that the police officers who have charged against them are properly dealt with. And so I don't know what the numbers, Matthew, was it 31 down or was it 40%? But it was a huge number. And so all across the board, the staffing studies that we need to wait for. We want to do this with data. We don't want to guess. We want to get the professionals to come in and tell us what the police department needs to do, and then it's our job to make sure that they do what they do. This goes back to what I said before, and this kind of follows what Judge Bradar said in his order last Friday. We know there's a will. The real question is whether the capacity, meaning the resources, are there to do what's needed. And we think they are. The city has told us that they are, but we have to wait and see.
So the
somewhere in that neighborhood, I'm not 100% certain, but I know it's down a big number. And that's just not working.
I think the caseload for each OPR investigator is like around 40 cases, almost about twice the number they should be carrying.
Just to put a fine sort of underscore on that, there was a practice until recently that the department has at least purported to end of sending folks within OPR out on extended patrol duty. So they weren't investigating cases any further. They were actually working on patrol. So sort of taking away resources from a vital area like the internal affairs OPR function to staff patrol, that's something that shouldn't happen going forward at all. And so those sorts of short-term fixes, I think, we see throughout the department as well, that the staffing study is going to try to sort of end permanently by putting a model in place that is much more able to be sustained.
Just one last thing here. This is, you kind of hit a sore spot with me when it comes to staffing. One of the things we'll be looking at from the department once the study is complete is both a short-term as well as a long-term plan to deal with. You can't just be, well, let's hire X number of more police. It takes time to hire people. It takes time to train people. It takes time before they go out on the street. Well, what are you going to do now? I mean, you know, you've got crime taking place, people getting shot, you got all kinds of stuff going on, and what are you going to do now? So that's going to require a short-term strategy that doesn't strip a critical unit like Matthew just got through mentioning. You know, let's put the complaints on hold to put more people. No, what's a viable strategy in order to make up the difference now? And then long-term, of course, civilianization, getting more officers if that's what is found to be needed, all that stuff, but that's a longer-term solution. You've got to be able to have both in place. So we'll be looking at that.
Thank you. We've got time for one more question, if there's one.
This is going to support the short staff, is it going to support the shortening the time for police officers to be put on review? Is it supposed to go from like a year to 6 months or something?
Oh, you mean the probationary period? No. You mean for the training itself? No, the training is the training. Some of it is mandated by the state in terms of the hours, and the department, like most departments, have additional hours that they have for training. So I'm not aware of any change just trying to put people out too soon. That's a mistake. You don't want to do that. You don't want to shortchange on that end. You might have a problem. So no, that's why I'm saying you got to have a short term. What do you do with your existing resources right now to kind of shore up critical areas, and then long term, of course, new hires backfilling. You got to take into account attrition. People are always retiring, leaving the service for whatever reason, so you have to hire enough for that. And that gets into another area that gets into, which is recruiting and hiring and retention. And I mean, all these things are connected. Nothing is in isolation. Everything connects to something. And so those are all part of an overarching strategy the department's going to have to deal with.
So next, I'm going to talk briefly about community engagement and focus in on a couple of key areas. So I'm going to talk to you for a minute about policies. As you heard from my teammates, the first year of the monitoring plan focuses heavily on BPD needing to review its internal policies and make edits to those policies, in addition to creating new policies where they don't exist, so that we can ensure that once it's time for training to happen, that training is using constitutional policies to inform officers around what engagement with residents should look like. So I want to talk to you all briefly about how we're thinking about what community engagement around policies looks like. We know that those policies are heavy to read, heavy to decipher, and we're obviously interested in getting your feedback on those policies before they get finalized. So I am working with members of the monitoring team and members of about 30 community-based organizations. So we'll be meeting on Friday to make some decisions around what broad-based community engagement looks like that uses scenarios directly from the DOJ report to make it very real to community members what we're gonna ask really open-ended questions like, so what do you think should happen once a police officer pulls you over for a routine traffic stop? And what have you seen happen? Right? So using real-life scenarios to kind of play forward what those policy modifications should look like. We don't want BPD to do it in a silo. We want residents to be a part of the policy changes that are going to be made because they're going to impact us. And so you'll see us over the coming weeks start to publicly share with you all when and where those meetings are going to happen. We're going to be doing that via a lot of different communication mechanisms, and I'm going to be using the neighborhood liaisons that live in the BPD districts around the Baltimore City area to help me have those policy conversations in the districts where they are. We'll also be partnering with community-based organizations to make sure that we're able to bring out more folks and to make sure that we're thinking about the differences between the neighborhoods and the differences between the districts. We know that Baltimore is a community of well over 300 unique neighborhoods, right? And so I could go around the corner from here and policing could look very different around the corner from here than it looks right here on Pumpkin Street. And so making sure that we are reaching as broadly and as deeply as possible to make sure that policies are done in a way that informs effective training. And that ultimately that training translates out into the street, so when a cop comes and engages you, you are not questioning whether or not that engagement is legal or not. And we can't do that without you. So I'm gonna turn the next piece of this over to Jessica, who's gonna talk to you all about our neighborhood liaison program, and then we'll take questions around community engagement.
So I've got a post some documents that got distracted by one today, and we listened to them. But what I want you to know about our neighborhood liaisons is they've been out since May, and they're working in their community. They've had a really diverse engagement with people from all walks of life. We've seen deep investment in community and reaching out to communities within church communities, schools, nonprofits in their area, people on the street. They're meeting at libraries on a regular basis, which you can come in and speak to them directly. They're marketing themselves, and we are too, so that if you ever want to come onto our Facebook and find out where your neighborhood liaison might be, we're trying to regularly post so that you can go find your neighborhood liaison, but you can also call. And our wonderful community coordinator, Darnell, will help you find your community liaison. We've seen 215, I believe exactly, community touches so far, just within their first 6 weeks, which I think for people who are pulling off 6 hours of work in a short amount of time are doing a lot. And we're excited to see that grow as you, the community, reaches out to them. The neighborhood liaisons are your first step in touching the monitoring team. It's a moment for you to sit down with somebody from your community who knows your community, might even know them, and speak to them directly about your concerns, what you're interested in knowing more about what we're doing, your analysis of our work, or any thoughts you have going forward. They'll know while you've been talking, I've noted your recommendations. Every time we hear from the community, it matters. So reaching out to a neighborhood liaison is a way to have that face-to-face conversation. We're also using neighborhood liaisons to really broaden our information sharing. As we begin to grow our policy and education sessions, we hope that our neighborhood liaisons will be able to help get that out to the communities and the precincts of Baltimore City better than just us throwing it out to social media, throwing it out in press releases, and hoping it's picked up. We want you to know that your communities are out there serving you from us to you, and we want to hear back from you. We will be increasing our touches. We will really we're advocating and being intentional about where we're doing our outreach. We want to know that we're not missing people. So whether it's in a church basement, a school assembly, wherever it needs to be, our NLs want to be there to hear from people. They're there to listen, and so we just need to know where they need to head. So if you haven't met them yet, and you have a place or space where large groups gather, or 2 people gather, let us know. They want to come find you and talk to you. Thanks, Jessica.
I want to take a couple of minutes just to acknowledge 3 of our 11 community liaisons who are here with us tonight. So we are in the Southeast District, and Brian Seal is the community engagement liaison for this district. Behind him is Kathy Trey Bolter, who is the community engagement, the neighborhood liaison for the Central District. And over here, toward the back is Melva Dunaway, who is the community engagement liaison for the Southern District.
Thank you.
Are there any questions about community engagement?
I have a question about the neighborhood.
Mhm.
My understanding is they're only tasked with 15 hours a week. Am I right about that? I mean, 15 hours a month. Am I right about that? And so for me, that doesn't seem to be robust enough for the need to look to get citizen engagement. So it's a question, I guess, to the monitoring team.
It's a great question. We would love to see them be out there much, much more. But we want to be fair to the citizens of Baltimore. Neighborhood liaisons are paid positions. This was secondary to our pre-planned budget, which is also very tight. I know it's hard to look at the numbers that you see flowing into the monitoring team and think, well, there could be a way to reallocate this. This is the most cost-effective and lowest cost monitoring or consent decree and monitoring team in history so far of this. Thereby, we don't have a lot of resources to allocate. We have taken from our budget what we can to get this started, but we're seeking outside funding to help us because we know that this is important and we want to see it. It's not like anything that's been done before. And so we really want to amplify this, but it's going to take some more cost investment from outside partners for us to be able to do more. But we're encouraged by the wonderful people we have on staff, and we know that they're giving more than their fair share of time to it, which that's Baltimore for you. We go all the way, and they're doing that. But I agree, it is a limited amount of time. We know that.
So, and if
Let me just add one other thing on this. This is a very tight budget, and those of us who are doing this are basically doing this because we love the work. I mean, a lot of our time, and I'm talking about, we had 23 to 24 people on this team, and we need every last one of them. Probably need more because this police department is in bad shape, and most of us are doing a lot of pro bono work. And so, we're doing this because we love the work and because we care about this city and we want to get it done. But obviously, if you've got some friends who are willing to help us, please let us know.
And Betty, you're right? 15 hours is not enough time. And I think those of you that know me know that I speak very plainly. So 15 hours is not enough time. As my team members alluded to, we are actively having conversations with funders around Baltimore City around what additional funding looks like in order to increase the hours to what we would consider decent level engagement. I will say that, and Seth says this often, we're running a marathon and not a race, right? And so we want to be really thoughtful about how community engagement happens, which is why we need to hear your voices around how community engagement happens, from policies to what makes sense around how much time a neighborhood liaison should be working, to the allocation of the number of neighborhood liaisons that should be in individual districts and communities, and anything else around community engagement, our communication mechanisms that we're using. And so I do want you to know that conversations are actively happening around increasing that funding.
All right, let me finish up with telling you where we're going in, let's say, the next 6 months. We're going to be around a while, but it makes sense for us to at least give you some idea of what we've already discussed the policies. We expect to finish pretty much most of the policies before the end of the year. As Chuck indicated to you, the use of force training that will be developed from the policy will actually be incorporated in the academy the first of the year, so that's a good thing. The other policies and the training and the curriculum that has to be designed will probably not start until the following year, but in the meantime, it's still up to the supervisors to give their subordinates correct directives so that they understand what constitutional policing looks like. We will be doing some things in the, we call it gap analysis. This deals with folks who have behavioral disorders. Chuck mentioned the fact that the key term is de-escalation. And one of the other things we're trying to do with folks that have behavioral disorders is The other thing that I would like to tell you, one of the things we have to do, we're doing all kinds of things to try to figure out how the community feels about this, but one of the things that the consent decree requires, we have to do a community survey. And we've hired Morgan State University to do the community survey, and we've hired Alpha Justice to do what's called a custodial, how folks who are in custody, how they feel about the BPD. So these are the things, there are a lot of things that will be going on in the next 6 months, but I thought I would just give you some highlights in terms of some of the other things that we are doing. Okay.
So I want to talk to you for a minute about dates that are important for you to note. There is a quarterly public hearing scheduled for July 26th at the federal courthouse down on Lombard Street. As I mentioned, it's open to the public. I believe it starts at 10. It's at 10 o'clock. The next quarterly public forum that we'll do that's like this is going to happen on October 1st. It'll happen in the Northwestern District at a to-be-determined location. And then the one following that will happen on January 8th. That'll happen in the Southwestern District at a to-be-determined location. So I'll open up the floor again for any questions that folks might have. So thank you all for coming. The monitoring team is going to stick around. So we open the floor for questions.
When you all do the reconfiguring of the complaint filing system, is there going to be something where citizens can go and read how the process actually is supposed to work?
You mean like a community resource about this is how the complaint system is supposed to proceed? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit to your question earlier. I mean, it's very clear that when this is sort of, now that we're blowing it up, when we build something better that's consistent with the consent decree, and hopefully it works for Baltimore residents much better, we've got to partner closely with the community to make sure that the word gets out about what's available. There would be a perfect system hypothetically in place, but if no one uses it when they have issues that come up, then it's all for naught, right? So people need to know not only about what's available, but know what they should be receiving from the police department, how things should progress. Know that after so long, I should get a letter in the mail telling me about the status of my complaint. And if I don't, I might need to see what's going on. And here are my opportunities to raise issues if what's supposed to happen isn't happening, right? So I think it goes to the larger process of collaborating with the community to make sure that what is in place when this consent decree process gets a few steps down the road is something that the public is familiar with and has been a part of developing and can assist on the ground floor in raising, hey, this isn't happening the way that it should, because the community knows much better what is expected of the department in this area. Does that answer your question?
If I could add too, if you have a thought that you want to share it, please feel free to email us, post aside after the meeting. I'll write it down, stand here and say everything you said. If there's a vision of what that process looks like for you, we want to know. We want to hear from as many people who want to share that with us. I know that you've been down this road, so I know, and we've heard from you, but we want, feel free to make sure that we're listening.
And then my last piece is I see in this paper that it says officer wellness. My concern is citizen wellness. After the trauma that is caused from a police misconduct incident or excessive force incident, there is no assistance offered to victims. So, because of my son's incident, I'm thinking that I need to develop a card for him that says, sorry, I have PTSD because I am a survivor of police brutality. Please forgive me, I am not being defiant, I'm just scared. So, is there anything that's going to be developed to help citizens with the after trauma of being affected by police-involved incidents that went horribly wrong?
I'm not sure there's anything in the consent decree that helps. It's a root survey to look at. But again, we're governed by, remember Shante said we are governed by the
Lord?
Yeah, for the first question.
Father Bruce?
I actually have two things to say. One, we invited a lot of people from our church to be here tonight, and they didn't come. I have ideas about why they haven't been engaging the immigrant, especially the Latino community, is important. So I'm just going to put it out there. I don't know if there'd be a way on a Sunday when people don't work to do something. That would be a possibility, I think. We have people that work a lot of hours. But we did a lot of promotion to try to get people here. So that's one thing I think maybe if we could, it would be having an off time instead of hours, or something, because I really think it's important for the immigrant community to hear an excellent presentation, which is what we got this evening. It was a super presentation. I'm very grateful that it was here. There's probably never been a bond if it was in some.
If you invite us, we'll figure out a way to get it.
Right, I think we need to do that.
We'll be there.
The other is, this is more concrete, and kind of a particular situation. Last week, a person was actually here, came to the church because he and his wife and daughter are victims of violent crime. So the alleged perpetrators were arrested, and bail was not set. They were being held, the three of them. Well, he was notified by his victim's advocate that one of the alleged attackers was up for bail. There was a bail hearing, and the person was bailed because apparently they had no prior incidents with police. There was no concerns about her. Well, the same week that she was bailed, the woman appears with other people in front of the victim's residence. Now, the victim's advocate tells the victim she's under house arrest, and she's not supposed to be out of her house. So he calls 911. 911 responds, and they send the police who tell him there's nothing they can do. He says, well, my victim's advocate says she's under house arrest, but she's right there. And the police said, no, there's nothing they can do. She hasn't done anything to you. Well, she has. They're waiting the court date. She attacked him, and it's on video. The video cameras all down Eastern Avenue filmed her attacking this family with two other people. So, in a case like that, he went to the police station to help, so I had to go with him. Actually took 5 other people, community advocates, and went down to the district. And it took about 5 hours to sort out why this woman was able to appear in front of the residence of people that she allegedly attacked. So, and then to find out who her supervising officer was, why she was let go on house arrest was never put on a monitor, and no monitoring agency was responsible for her. And then to try to contact the state's attorney through the victim's advocate to see if they could get a reissue a warrant for her arrest so she could be taken into custody. So, my point in bringing this up is the state's attorney had no communication with the police department, who had no communication with whoever the supervising officer was, at least in the district here, had no communication with who the monitors were supposed to be, to make sure that this woman was staying in her house.
And you don't mean us as monitors, you're talking.
No, I'm talking about the monitoring company who puts the GPS on you and says you don't leave your house. That's what I mean by monitor. So there was no communication between any of those. And so through the great work of the desk clerk at the Southeast District, and who spent a lot of time with us, but I'm sure he was busy doing other stuff, we were able to track down all these folks and make sure that the family that, is frightened, we have a gentleman who sleeps in his car next outside his house watching so that people don't come into their house and attack. So, I mean, it's an extreme situation. But I guess the question is communication between departments. I don't know if that's your part of your detail or your responsibility to oversee that, but that one agency, one group of people is communicating with the other, especially cases like this where people are victims of violent crime, where people are not being released and back into the community, where they could potentially, take revenge, and I get the point is, I guess, communication between the different departments.
This may be something Chuck may want to respond to, but we don't stand in the shoes of the police department, so you're right, that we can't tell them how to do it. However, what you just described to me sounds like the initial responding officer should have done more than what he or she did. And so the remedy for that person would be to go to the internal affairs and file a complaint. Now, I don't know what would happen to that, but what we do, this is when we need to get involved, because then if we know about it, this is something that we would follow to make sure that it was handled appropriately. So that's really how the monitoring team can get involved. But in terms of this unfortunate event that you're talking, we really don't stand in the shoes of the police department. Chuck, you respond.
Well, I mean, yeah, they could have done more than just say there's nothing we can do. I mean, obviously they could have taken a little closer look at the whole situation and certainly written it up as a report. ID the individual that she was, who had been previously arrested, who was outside the home, all those. I mean, there's things they could have done. Now, whether they could have actually made an arrest based on what was there, I don't know what all took place. But the bigger issue is one of the lack of communication from the court to the DA to the state attorney, rather, to the department. I don't know if there was an order of protection put out. I don't know what the circumstances were where, you stay away, you can't come within X number of, feet of the person, and, I just don't know the answers to that. But clearly it points out the problem that had you not found an officer willing to spend a few hours with you to track it all down, it never would have been resolved if it got resolved at all. So that's not within the monitoring plan, but it highlights a much, to me, deeper problem, and that is communication between the various parts of the criminal justice system. That should have been information that should have been transmitted so that everyone knew that if there was a order of protection that was issued, if this person wasn't supposed to be in this area, whatever it might have been, that district